And that's the first time ever since I moved into that building that nimeteremka stairs na I think it was a few seconds because they were too quick. I couldn't see because walikuwa wameni cover up. The next thing I know, I'm being sandwiched in the back of a car. I think there was one guy on my right, the other one on my left. And then we drove around for like 2 hours. So me, in my mind, I knew that I'm being taken out of Nairobi somewhere. And I knew this was it because first of all, they didn't introduce themselves. Second of all, I've been blindfolded. So the next thing I knew, story yangu imeisha hivyo. So we drove around for like 2 hours, then they started whispering. And then one of them was asking for directions from someone on the phone. And then they sent him the pin. And then the next thing I know, I'm pulling up to, I don't know, one of them, they stopped the car, they came out, and then one of them was like, ni hapa? And then the others were like, yeah, ni hapa. Wakasema, sawa, toa hiyo jamaa tumalizane na hapa kwa kahawa, tuende kufanya kazi ingine. And I knew that was it. And then the next thing I know, I'm being taken out of the car. I was still in my t-shirt, my short, barefoot, hands tied behind my back. I've been blindfolded. The next thing I know, I'm being taken down the stairs into a room. It was a very cold room. Then they told me to lie on my stomach. They asked me they asked my name. I told them Bilisimani. The next thing, they wanted my ID number. The next thing, they asked me where I come from. I think walikuwa wanataka kujua ushago ni wapi. I told them. Then they asked me nimeshikiwa wapi. So I was like, I thought these were the guys that brought me here. So I think those were the other guys that I was handed to who were asking questions. They let me lie on that floor for like an hour. Then after an hour, somebody came. They took me upstairs into, I think it was an interrogation room. Those guys at the interrogation room were a bit friendly. The guys at where I was being held up were a bit rough. So the next thing I know, I'm being sat on a chair, and then one of the guys started asking me questions. They asked me the usual question: what is your name, your ID number, where do you live, your social media handles. They wanted Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And then the next thing they told me was, we are going to ask you questions and you are going to answer us. If you don't, first of all, this is not a police station, so they might not find you, so you have to cooperate.
Gross human rights violations in the last couple of weeks. Many families have suffered, continue to suffer. We have an entire ward at the Kenyatta National Hospital of victims of police excesses, and that's just one hospital. We have many other hospitals in different parts, not just of Nairobi, but of the entire country, that have people who are sick. Up to now, we're still trying to understand the magnitude of the violations that have been meted out on Kenyans.
Under the Kenyan and international law, every individual, you and me included, is entitled to the fundamental rights of due process and fair treatment, especially in the event of an arrest. The commando-like abductions that we saw during the protests against the government and against the finance bill is, or where individuals were subjected to both physical and psychological torture, stripped them of their human dignity. And the unresolved historical deaths, alongside with the forced abductions that we've witnessed or we've been witnessing in this country, are also just like the case of unemployment, corruption, and other factors that are bewildering this government, a ticking time bomb to this country that will seriously come to strike at once, and it will strike very bad. I've been following the Citizens' Assembly that was convened today at the Ufangamano House, where the Law Society of Law Society of Kenya President, Ms. Faith Odhiambo, has been speaking, and the event was graced or was attended by a majority of the youth whom also suffered the illegal abductions by the government. Welcome to the Bold Analysis. My name is Frank Oduor.
Comrades and colleagues, for decades our country has faced endless spate of unresolved extrajudicial killings associated with political spectrum. I remember Law Society was involved in collecting evidence for the last Mandamano killings. To date, we are still demanding from IPOA, why haven't you tabled that report? Why haven't you held those policemen accountable? Why is the Inspector General of Police still sitting on that chair? We all know about the controversial death of P.O. Gamapinto in February 24, 1965. Very few will remember January 29, 1969, where Agwins Kodek, a pioneering Mau Mau lawyer, died in a car crash under mysterious circumstances. The families of Pinto and Agwins have never known justice, and the same fate befell Thomas Joseph Adhiambo Mboya on July 5, 1969. Have we forgotten J.M. Kariuki on March 2, 1975? Where is the truth about Bruce Roy Mackenzie's death on May 24, 1979? We are here today to stand for justice for victims. We do not want to leave any man behind. The stories of those who came before us, the different regimes, the different decades, are testament that when political stars and fights come to an end, there are bodies that are littered in the streets. There are bodies that are left for our kin to deal with. Yet no one knows justice. No one sees justice for those victims. I would go on until the cows come home. And you will all see that each regime in this country has had its fair share of assassinations in an attempt to eliminate persons perceived to be standing for something that the political class do not want. Killing of innocent Kenyans on the streets started with Mzee Jomo Kenyatta on the dark Saturday of October 25th in 1969, when Jomo's visit to Kisumu turned bloody. We all know how many Kenyans died during the struggle for multi-party democracy under Moi's 24-year rule. Abductions, torture, and painful deaths did not start with this regime. The police have merely inherited the vice from generation to generation. And we are saying, does it stop in this generation? Yes. Does it stop in this generation? Yes. It must end in this generation. No more abductions, no more extrajudicial killings. President Mwai Kibaki presided over the worst tide of killings. We cannot forget about the 2007-2008 post-election violence. And we do not ever want to go back there. Uhuru Kenyatta too was no different, because every year the local newspapers reported how many people disappeared mysteriously in the hands of law enforcement agencies. And just when we thought there was a new dawn in this country, new hope, a country where the head of state was brought in the mantra for the young people, a youthful leader, we have seen police disappointing this hope.
Such are the harrowing tales that those who were in the hands of, we don't know whether they were the police, they were the DCI, or they were the NIS, or even the military, or just bandits or criminal, suffered. Now, what inspired me during that citizens' assembly was the speech that was made by the magnificent Faith Odhiambo, who is the LSK president. By the way, Faith Odhiambo really stood her ground and really impressed not only Kenyans, but also the international community and the human rights defenders on how she stood and made it a steadfast call to go and speak for the rights and defend the rights of those who are arrested in various parts of this country. In so many years, as a matter of fact, we've never seen a Law Society of Kenya president who is so down to earth and so service like Faith Odhiambo. Odhiambo deserves all the flowers. She deserves all the praises for her courageous and tactful dealings with the government and with the rogue police on the cases of forced abductions that we witnessed. This is the president of the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, who was also in attendance at this event, together with the voice of another victim who is a young lawyer who equally narrates how her harrowing abduction from her house in the wee hours of the morning was.
I'm Peter Maynard. I'm president of the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, which is a group of 56 jurisdictions around the world, including Kenya. And I had intended to visit Kenya some time ago, and so I thought it would be appropriate to come now, also before the meeting of the Law Society of Kenya elections. No to police brutality. No to extrajudicial killings and abductions. Those are some of the fundamental principles of the Commonwealth Lawyers Association. Our objectives are simply to uphold human rights, the rule of law, access to justice, and the independence of judges and lawyers. And so I make just 2 points, that we have observed the situation with great concern, and in solidarity with the Law Society of Kenya, we have also issued a statement.
Something just told me, you know what, check the window, like look outside. And I checked, and I saw a silver SUV parked outside, and 3 men got out of it. So I called my partner at that time using my laptop on WhatsApp. And I told him, okay, you know what? There is a silver SUV parked outside. There are 3 guys moving around. I'm scared that they're going to take me right now. I don't know what to do. So he tells me, no, just calm down, breathe, observe, text me everything, like tell me everything that's going on. I'm on my way. So I observed them for about half an hour. They were just moving around. It was like surveillance of some sort. So they were moving around, observing the area. I don't know what they were trying to find really, but that went on for like half an hour. Then they left. And around the same time they were leaving, he arrived. I was so scared. I was rooted to one spot of the living room the entire time until he got there. Then I was like, oh, Fuchs, now I can breathe. So that evening went by. It was very calm. It was peaceful. We slept.
What was your emotional state at that point?
My anxiety was so bad. I was having panic attacks after every couple of hours. It was insane because the day before they had taken my friend Shadrach, so I had a feeling that they were gonna come for me next, especially if they went through his phone. Yeah, so that evening went by it was calm, it was quiet, we slept. I wasn't able to sleep much during that period because, of course, nerves, anxiety. So
from those speeches and submissions made at the Citizens' Assembly, it is clear that there is something wrong with this country, especially in the manner in which we deal with unarmed, peaceful demonstrators, whom the government otherwise sees as threats to the government. And it was quite unfortunate to see the president of this country call peaceful protesters as treasonous criminals. That was very much unwarranted. You know, the demonstrations led to bloody crackdown by police where at least 39 people were killed and hundreds injured. This was one of the lowest moments that we had as a country in the recent past. So, you know, the tact that the police uses to send fear that are just only like colonial-like ways to deal with protesters or people who are perceived to be speaking for their rights is totally uncalled for. And it is something that should not be happening in this country, especially at this century and at this time of the year. So, you can ask yourself, if it is a time like this that you're witnessing this, what of situations that we have now volatility in this country like during electioneering times? How many people are said to be missing? And even as a time when we were recording this, there are still many people who are arrested, who are abducted by the police as alleged, whom their traces or their whereabouts have not been known. A certain story yesterday was running of Denzel Odhiambo, a JKU student who was also part of the demonstrations, who went missing only to be discovered later with a lifeless body in a quarry somewhere within Juja. That was very much unfortunate, and it was one of the saddest moments. I don't know how best to describe it. The other thing that has promoted these commando-like abductions and cases of human rights abuse by the police are the toothless constitutional commissions that we have. For example, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Directorate of Public Prosecutions, and the Directorate of Criminal Intelligence, together with the National Intelligence Service. Not forgetting the Office of the Ombudsman and the Office of the Attorney General. These ones have been like a shame. And it would be wrong also not to mention the Office of the Inspector General of Police. They've been like a shame to this country. You know, whenever we hear cases of police brutality, police using excessive force against peaceful citizens, it is always expected that the IPOA would usually take their constitutional mandates and serve justice where justice was not met. But what we are always ushered into is a long process of endless blame game and long statements from these bodies that will take action, and nobody bothers to take action. There is something, as a matter of fact, that I've been asking myself. Why is it that we must have as a country that a majority of the membership of bodies such as IPOA, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, must be having police officers who have just been seconded from the normal police duty like? You know, we are not saying that all police officers are bad, but there are bad elements within the service who are spoiling the better good name of the police. The problem of the police, for instance, I don't know whether to say that it is a sort of a generational curse or a sort of a generational inheritance in terms of the commandership of the police. Because why is it that 50 or more than 60 years after independence, we still have to resort to old tactics to deal with citizens, when we have a constitution that guarantees and warrants the very same citizens' rights and fundamental principles under which they're supposed to be dealt with in the event of breaking the law? Another thing that got me surprised is the issue of the president seeming not to be moved or touched by the issues that are bewildering the service, the police service, and the general population at large. And this was well curtailed when he rose to give a press statement on the protests that were held in Kenya, and the unfortunate thing that he said termed the protesters as treasonous criminals and did not admit or seem to show remorse for the victims of the police brutality that was witnessed in Kenya. The saddest was one who was asked a question about the 12-year-old boy, whom we shall not forget his name, Kennedy Onyango, was shot a record 8 times, allegedly by a police officer. And the only answer I could give is the boy not alive. That was very, very much unfortunate. At least show some humanity, especially at a time when he rode on a campaign promise, according to the plan, the Kenya Kwanza plan, that he will see to it that they will end the police abuse against the urban youth, which has been something that has been very, very common in Kenya, and nobody seems to want to tackle this. That is what Ruto promised people in the run to the 2022 general elections. Now, as we hold him to account and accountable and transparency for his actions of omission or commission, then it would be equally wise to hold the president to account for the instances of extrajudicial killings, forced abductions, forced disappearances, and cases of unnecessary police brutality or force. That one, we must walk that conversation, and he must also equally walk the talk. Another issue that Kenyans are not okay with is the issue of unresolved historical injustices. You remember the case of Baby Pendo, I think that was around 2017 in Kisumu, was shot by a police officer inside their house. And that case took twists. And it is at the IPOA, Mara, it's where the file has been submitted, where up to now, we don't know whether the perpetrators of that act or incidents have been brought to book. What ends is an endless vicious circle of being taken around, while the people who perpetrated these acts are walking scot-free. So this is a moment that we need to hold the police accountable. In fact, in developed countries, by now, the Inspector General of Police could have resigned. The CS for Interior Security could have resigned and could not have waited for the shame of being fired. That one at least could have earned him some level of respect, not just nationally, but also internationally, bearing in mind that he is a constitutional lawyer who brags of a practice of defending for human rights. So, these ones were very, very unfortunate incidences and events that transpired in a country that we would like to see an end to. And if we cannot see an end to this, then why do we have our constitution bombarded with so many clauses on human rights and human principles that are supposed to be obeyed and defended, and which even the president swore to defend when he was taking the oath of office? That marks the end of our analysis. We would like to remind you to continue subscribing to our YouTube channel in case you're new here, and you can turn on the notification bell such that you'd be notified whenever we upload new content. Thank you.